And we're back here with a review of WandaVision Season 1, Episode 3, called Now in Color. Last week when we did this review, the episode titles did not have titles yet, but they do now. This one was called Now in Color, which was cool. Probably the best of the three so far, I thought. This was a really, really good episode, and my biggest criticism from last week about the show not yet picking up, well, it definitely did in this episode, and as always, we're being joined by Doc Chris Mueller at BR_Doctor on the Twitter machine. Chris, welcome back, my man.
Thanks.
Do you share similar sentiments on the show with this being the best episode of the three yet?
I mean, I've liked all three, but this was definitely the most story advancement we've gotten in one episode.
Yeah. No, it definitely was.
It made it the most interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely picked up the pace a little bit and gave us a glimpse about what the rest of the season might have in store. But we're being joined, as we were last week, by Phil. Phil, welcome back to the show, my man. You were on the Twitter machine at Phil DL. What was your Twitter handle again, Phil? I always forget off the top of my head.
It's at Phil DL616.
Perfect, Phil. Welcome back to the show, my man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're talking WandaVision Season 1. I almost said Season 3. Season 1, Episode 3 here today. And what I said was a very good episode. Chris, I got your thoughts. Phil, what were your initial thoughts on this episode after watching it?
I was surprised they made so much story advancement right away. Like, they did so much setup in the first two episodes.
Mm-hmm. So
they really kind of flipped over at least one big card this episode.
No, definitely. I mean, with the seeds that they're planting for what's to come, I thought the same thing. I thought they would be waiting a little bit longer, probably by episode 4 or 5, because I think there's going to be 9 episodes, as you said last week, Chris. So I thought they would wait a little bit longer to get to this point, but I'm not complaining, as I thought they did a great job of kind of, again, setting the stage for what's to come in the rest of the season. But we had Dick Van Dyke influence in the first episode. The last one was Bewitched. Would you guys say this one was more Brady Bunch? I couldn't quite tell.
Oh, yeah. The living room wasn't quite as faithful to the original set as the previous episodes were, but that was definitely the Brady Bunch's staircase. It was just aligned slightly differently in the living room than it would have been in the show.
Was the intro inspired by Brady Bunch as well?
It sounded more like Partridge Family to me.
Okay.
The theme song definitely had a Partridge Family feel, and there was also that like multicolored window above like the entranceway in the living room that kind of reminded me of the Partridge Family bus a little bit. So I think they definitely threw a couple references into a few different shows.
One of the few things that stood out to me right from the get-go during that initial opening sequence was the God, what do you call it exactly? Not a pentagon? I don't know. It was like the honeycomb shape of where Wanda's face was in. I think Vision's face was in it too during the opening, title sequence, whatever. And I mention that because they showed a lot of that during the first 2 episodes as well. Do you guys know if there's any significance there? If it's like, I've seen a lot of speculation that it could be like a Queen Bee type situation with Wanda being in that role. Do you guys know if there's any significance to that, or is that just reading too much into it?
So I rewatched the first 2 episodes before I watched this episode, and I totally didn't notice that episode 2 when the beekeeper comes out of the sewer. And I don't know why I didn't connect the dots before, but like beekeepers, of course, is like an AIM thing. It's homage to AIM. But then when I looked at it again, it clearly had like a sword logo on his back. So I was like, maybe it's not AIM. But then all this honeycomb stuff, I was like, are they hitting at AIM here? I don't know.
Well, do you think that there is still a chance they can get to that? Because of course at the end, Monica was wearing the sword necklace. So obviously that's where they're going with this. But do you think AIM could still have a role in the show going forward? Do you think that's completely out of the question at this point?
I'm not sure at this point. I thought I was sure the second time, and I saw the beekeeper outfit, and I was like, yeah, that seems like AIM. And then I looked at it, and I was like, okay, maybe it's just a hazmat suit. And then I kept noticing all the honeycomb stuff, and I was like, yeah, AIM makes a lot of sense. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? Did you notice that as well? Did you kind of pick up on that as too?
I saw somebody point that out, and it clicked that, like, oh yeah, the old yellow AIM suits from the comics, they kind of did look like beekeepers, so that made a lot of sense. But I'm just wondering if they'll even go back to AIM, because AIM was already technically in the MCU, and Iron Man, what was it, 2 or 3? 3.
Mm-hmm.
With Aldrich Killian.
Yep.
Was like advanced idea mechanics was his thing, but they could, revamp it and maybe even use MODOK in some way at some point. But I sort of hope that they don't convolute it too much. Like, I kind of want it to just be S.W.O.R D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if AIM is involved, then it's going to be another Hydra situation where AIM is just infiltrating S.W.O.R D, and I don't know. But they did reference Hydra in this episode with the little commercial, so who knows what's going on.
Yeah,
Wasn't AIM
go
bad
ahead,
guys
Phil,
in another movie, though? Wasn't AIM bad guys in, like, Ant-Man or something
Yeah,
else?
wasn't it the first Ant-Man? Because that's what I was thinking, too.
Were they?
Weren't they one of the ones that were bidding on the Pym suit that ended up being Yellow Jacket?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there was a representative there. Okay, because I was going to say, I thought it was just Pym Technology or whatever that Darren Cross was running. But yeah, there probably was an AIM representative in that room.
Yeah, that's what that reminded me of, too. When I heard AIM, yeah, obviously from Iron Man 3, like you mentioned, Chris, but like Phil said, that was kind of what came to my mind, too. But I think the best part about the show so far, again, we're only 3 episodes in, which means we're only a third through the show, but they're keeping a lot of people guessing. So before we get into specifics, Phil, I'll start with you. Your predictions from last week with what you think might happen. Did those change after watching this episode, or do you think it might still happen the way that you expected it to?
No, this definitely gets me even more behind my theory that Wanda knows exactly what's going on, yeah. And she is like in full control.
Well, do you think so? I think it was episode 2 that she, did the rewind or whatever, and it kind of made it clear that if she's not completely in control, that there is at least an element of that. We had that again in this episode, though it wasn't the exact same thing. They did that great glitch kind of thing where it actually made you think that the episode like rewound by accident or whatever. I gave it a couple seconds knowing the context of the show. That's probably what they were going for, but there were probably a lot of people out there that thought it legitimately glitched for a second. But it was a different kind of rewind, and her expressions didn't change the same way they did during that initial rewind in the last episode. So do you think she was in control of that, or do you think that was some other entity?
Just because it seems like every time it happens, it seems like it happens at a time where it's something that's to her detriment or something that she doesn't want to happen. It makes me feel like she's doing it. And like this was the first episode that we got any kind of inkling that Vision is not in on it. Like he's in the dark.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Chris? So how have your predictions or thoughts in the show changed so far?
Well, I did read an interview with Elizabeth Olsen that kind of hinted at something interesting. She seemed to imply that Wanda has suppressed a lot of memories somehow, and that her remembering that she had a twin brother sort of triggered something in her. So it was almost like her delusion was so powerful that she's forgetting parts of her old life, but I do think she's controlling the situation. I just think there's more to it. Mm-hmm. And I think somebody is influencing something in the background. I just don't know what yet. I don't know if they'll go the full route with bringing like the whole Mephisto thing into this because of the sons. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. We'll see. The whole thing with the sons being born like this early kind of surprised me. I expected the pregnancy to drag out for a couple of episodes at least. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, pregnancies in sitcoms are not uncommon, so I had a feeling they were going to mine some comedy out of that by trying to put them in a couple of different sitcom settings, but this one didn't really end with the setting changing, so I'm really curious to see what the next episode is like, if it even evokes a specific sitcom at all, or what's going to happen.
So what's the exact time frame here, you think? Is this the 70s now or early 80s?
Well, this would have been the 70s.
Okay.
But, there's there's things from the 70s and the 80s that all kind of look the same. Like the furniture in the living room that they had, that could have been from the 70s or the 80s. That ugly pea green couch.
Yeah.
Like I knew people with that fucking couch. Like I probably slept on a couch like that at some point in my life. It was right out of Brady Bunch and Partridge Family and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think this episode didn't lean as hard into going after one specific show and was just more like that's sort of the backdrop, and we're going to use this as a setting for all these weird moments. Like, how many sitcoms have you seen where somebody's trying to hide an animal or something from their landlord and it's in the background causing havoc while they're distracting them? Like, that's a common thing, and to see them do that with the stork that somehow got brought to life, likely by her young child in her belly.
Yeah.
It was all really funny and significant in a way that I think we'll see play out soon.
So with the pregnancy happening as quickly as it did, Vision was taken aback by it. He obviously had no idea what was going on. He was kind of questioning things a little bit more than she was. Does that back up Phil's theory that she's completely in control of the narrative here?
Well, I do think Vision, because he's part of Wanda's delusion, creation, whatever you want to call it, is in the dark in a lot of ways. But he's also clearly aware of himself being Vision and having to hide. So it's kind of strange. That whole scene with Herb and Agnes outside really threw me for a loop, because I was like, it almost seems like she's aware of what's going on right here too, and trying not to spill too much.
Who, Agnes you're talking about?
Yeah, because she like kind of shut Herb up when it seemed like he was going to reveal something big, and then she just took off, and Herb was like, all right, catch you on the flip side. Like, yeah, so that really intrigued me, because I'm very curious now as to how aware any of these people are. Like, are some of these people more aware than others? Obviously, people have theorized about who her character could be, so if she is important in some way, possibly maybe also versed in using magic, then maybe she has a little bit of awareness to what's going on around her. I don't know.
What do you think they were going to say during that scene? It sounded like they were going to say trapped. We are trapped, or we aren't real, or whatever. What did you think they were going to say before Agnes cut him off?
Yeah, trapped or something like that. I mean, the doctor really made that line obvious when he's like, small towns, they're hard to escape.
Mm-hmm.
Like, clearly they're trapped. And the whole thing with his car breaking down seemed like just another sitcom foible, but again, it's because he can't leave if he wants to. Wanda's, kind of pulling all the strings, whether it's consciously or subconsciously.
So, do you guys think that Westview is an actual town? Because when they zoom out at the very end of the episode, before Monica gets sucked out of the universe and all the cars show up, and it's what we saw in the trailer months ago, so this is nothing new. We see a sign that says, "Welcome to Westview." So, Phil, I'll start with you. Do you think this might actually be, like, a town in reality that's a part of this? I don't know. What are your theories as far as that is concerned?
I think it's definitely a small town. I would be curious as to what was the inciting incident that brought them to that town.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it is, it seems like she has created this bubble or this reality around everybody that's in that town. Now, I would gather some of them are actually people that live in the town, but I think like there's probably either somebody else that is another like S.W.O.R.D sleeper agent in there, or something else. Because I get the same feeling that Agnes and some of the others know that it's not real.
Yeah. No. They made it pretty clear during that one scene, like Chris was saying, that they know that something's going on here, but they're doing their best to hide it. I was thinking maybe because Agatha, I've seen theories in the last couple of hours that maybe Agnes is working with Wanda, but she told her that she would keep it under wraps, and if not, she'd be punished or whatever. She definitely exuded, Wanda did, during that one scene with Monica where she brought up her dead brother. She was exuding villain tendencies. So it really looks like we are headed in that direction for sure. If not completely, there's going to be some sort of... there has to be some sort of payoff there that makes sense as far as Wanda being not only being in control, but maybe not being the main villain. But I don't know. They're keeping us guessing, which is cool. What were your thoughts on that, Chris, with the whole Westview thing and whether it's an actual town or what do you think happened there?
Well, I was curious about that, so I immediately looked it up because Westview didn't stick out in my brain.
Yeah.
There is a Westview, New Jersey. They are supposed to be in New Jersey.
Oh, that makes sense.
There was a reference to Hackensack in a previous episode.
Yes.
And then also Wanda and Vision in the comics settled in another town in New Jersey that they haven't talked about. But the real town has a space in the name. It's West Space View. So it's slightly different, but, whatever. All those people are probably freaking out watching this episode like, oh my God, it's our hometown. But
Yeah.
I didn't see any kind of significance to anything Marvel related, so I'm wondering if maybe they just did that because they're like, oh, let's just base it in something that's more realistic and not, another town that we're making up. But yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see what happens in this next episode because she can't hide the babies forever. So I have a feeling that that's going to start to create more problems with the other people because you saw how Monica reacted. She's just like, oh my God, you're pregnant?
Mm-hmm.
And then she immediately goes into labor. It's like everyone's going to have that reaction.
Yeah.
And it's going to start to cause things to either fall apart or it's going to have some kind of ripple effect. I'm just curious if they're going to age the kids super quick or if they're going to be, babies that age at a normal rate once they're out.
No, that's a good question because the pregnancy was sped up. It's not a stretch to say that they could be, aging quickly. Probably not. But I guess we'll see. Well, that was another thing I wanted to ask you guys, too, because you guys know way more about this than I do. Was there any significance with the Billy and Tommy names, or is that just random?
Well, those are the names of the kids that they have
in the comics? Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah, but, so Billy is a character called Wiccan, and he's got, magic powers like his mom. And then I thought it was interesting that they showed Vision using the super speed in this episode because the other kid, Tommy, is a speedster.
Oh, okay.
Sort of similar to his uncle, Quicksilver.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they brought up Quicksilver in this episode, I'm almost wondering, are they going to age the kids so fast and just have that actor play her son now? Because that would be super awkward.
Yeah.
That would be really weird.
Yeah, especially because of the weirdness in the comics with those two characters. I can't remember when it happened, but there was some weird implied incest stuff with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch in the comics.
Oh God.
Yeah, definitely in the Ultimates comics. But
so it's a tricky thing. They were smart to ignore that in Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they probably will continue to, which is definitely their best bet. But you mentioned the, what was I going to ask you guys about specifically? Oh, the brother. So they mentioned the brother. They mentioned Quicksilver. This is the first mention that we've heard of him probably since Ultron, because I know, I don't know. She referenced losing someone in Endgame, but I think she was talking about Vision and not Quicksilver because that happened so long ago. It's been 5-6 years now since we've seen the character in the MCU. We obviously lasted all of one movie. Did the mention here mean, does that signify that as we were talking about last week, they will bring back Quicksilver in some form or fashion, whether it's as, I don't know if it's a ghost or a flashback or an actual appearance? Because especially if she controls the narrative, she could do whatever she wants. What were you guys thinking there? Do you think he might be brought back? Chris, I'll start with you.
I really don't know. I wouldn't surprise me at this point because they've been dropping little hints here and there. But, I mean, if he never shows up, I'm not going to be disappointed. But if he does show up, I'll be happy.
Yeah. No, I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be a nice... I mean, they wrote the character off in Ultron, but it would be a nice little comeback after he was forgotten about for that one movie that he was in. What about you, Phil? What were your thoughts on the Quicksilver name drop?
I thought it was just like a quick reference for now. I would be really surprised if they actually bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, and while I'm saying that, it would be a perfect time to bring it back because you don't have it tied to any big movie or anything. You could easily just have them in a few episodes.
Yeah. No, that's possible. Yeah, they could definitely, or just at least one episode, especially with it only being a 9-episode series. My prediction is that he will be back in some form or fashion at some point. I don't think they would mention it for no reason because there was a million different things they could have referenced in that moment with Monica revealing that she knows a little bit about Wanda without actually mentioning her dead brother from X amount of years ago. So we'll see. But speaking of S.W.O.R.D, though, after what we found out on this episode of the Monica either being a part of S.W.O.R.D or a volunteer on their behalf or whatever to be a part of this Westview world. What are you guys thinking? Is S.W.O.R.D, are they part of are they the good guys here? Are they the bad guys? We know Wanda has something to do with this world being in her control, but Phil, I'll ask you first. Where does S.W.O.R.D fall in the equation so far as from what you believe?
I think S.W.O.R.D is kind of investigating this, and they're kind of looking whatever incited this thing that forced her to create this bubble. I think they are investigating it, and they're trying to get her attention, like, get out of there. And they're probably looking at it from the outside looking in, like, they think that she's trapped in there.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, that all lines up. The little facility that they showed for a brief moment at the end of the episode, I was trying to look at as much of that as possible, and it looked like there was some kind of clean room set up and a little lab area next to all the military tents. So it seems like they've been there for a little while watching things. And I think they threw a little red herring in there at the end when they showed all the soldiers sort of approaching Monica with their guns out. I don't think that they're hostile towards her. I think she's with them. And that, the next episode we'll see her like waking up in the field because it looked like she passed out there sort of at the end, and probably just be like, why are you pointing the gun at me, idiot, or something like that, But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm wondering, so like that little membrane that they kind of showed her get pitched through, seems like that's the border of the town that Wanda's kind of controlling. And then they showed like a bunch of lights looking at it. Do you think those were just lights like shining in the area, or were they actually involved with putting some kind of protective border around the town?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. It probably has something to do with creating the illusion of the town itself, I would think. I don't know. Did it look to you guys like a football field or something where the town, like where the Westview sign was? Or was that just me? It just looks like some giant random field. That's where this makeshift town either was or was supposed to be, or I don't know. Maybe it's just the made-up town in this universe. I'm not exactly sure, but what were your thoughts about that, Phil?
Yeah, when you say it that way, it looks very barren. It would be absolutely wild if like this was like an abandoned town when they got there, and she just created all of this from scratch.
Yeah, that's possible. That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking either it could be obviously an existing town that she just put into her own universe and now she has complete control over. But if that is the case, and these characters, Herb and Agnes specifically, know what's going on and know this isn't real, why do you guys think they wouldn't tell Vision what's actually going on? Do you think it would anger Wanda or something, or there's consequences, or would they disappear like the other guy did? Because we haven't seen the husband since. The woman from that 70s show's husband who choked in the first episode, he wasn't in this episode, he wasn't in the last one. We've seen most of the neighbors and members of the neighborhood since then, except for him. Do you think they would be pulled from the experiment like Monica? What do you think was going on with that?
I have to assume if they all are in there and they know that if some of them know she's controlling it, they have to be afraid of her.
Yeah.
So they're probably like watching it and like they don't want to upset her at this point. And that's not that I think Wanda would hurt anyone, because I mean the same thing with Monica, just forced you out or you just disappeared.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think we're going to find out that most of these people are real and under some kind of spell that Wanda's putting out. But the fact that they recognized that Geraldine / Monica didn't really come from there,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think indicates that, like, they are residents of this town, and I believe the town is full of real people that are all being trapped, and kind of like with the doctor being like, we can't escape no matter what we try to do. Like, and I do think that there are some people who are more aware than others. It's just, I don't know if they're fully aware of, like, they know something's off. They just don't know what,
Mm-hmm. Aside from just Wanda, do you guys think there might... I think I asked this last week, but do you still think there could be a bigger force at play here? I know obviously the Wanda thing would be a nice swerve. It would be a nice take and a nice, like, different twist than what we were expecting, I guess, when the show first started. But do you think there could be another character in play here that we haven't seen, or obviously they haven't referenced? Like you guys said, Mephisto or AIM, or I saw people mentioning the Grim Reaper or something like that. I don't know too much about that, so I can't comment on that. But is there another character in play here helping out Wanda that we just don't know yet, or do you guys think it's entirely Wanda that's controlling it and that's what the show's going to be?
I think there could be something else at play here. Just the fact that, we already know that they're setting up multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
We don't know how much decimation has affected the planet, and we don't know if there's anything like a rift open anywhere. And that's what made me think, like, when they had all of the S.W.O.R.D people outside of it, like, were they there because there was, like, some kind of, like, disturbance there and they went there to examine it? And then Wanda somehow took advantage of the situation. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I guess it's possible. I guess we'll see where they go with it from here. There's a lot of different ways they could take the show. I'm very excited to see what they do with it. But Chris, I think I forgot to ask you your thoughts on it. Do you think there's someone else in play here?
I do. I just don't know what it is yet. I don't know. Like, I don't think S.W.O.R.D is controlling anything. I think they're there in a observational capacity and they want to try and stop it. I think it's one of those situations where Wanda can throw people out, but nobody can really break in through her barrier.
Mm-hmm.
At least not in conventional way. We obviously saw one guy crawl up through the sewer and she put a stop to that right away.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. It does seem like she's the one manipulating everything around. I just don't know if there's somebody manipulating her in some way.
Yeah, that's the real question here. I don't think we'll find out in the next episode, but it is worth looking forward to. I like the cliffhanger that they ended on with Monica in the field, S.W.O.R.D presumably showing up. And, we see a lot of that same footage from the trailer, so we can kind of depict what was going on there. Jimmy Woo showing up, everyone else, probably Darcy Lewis. But other than that, we have no idea what else is about to come, so it's purely speculation at this point. And I feel like this might be the first piece of whatever that Marvel has done in a while. This is the first real show they've done aside from the Netflix stuff. But this is the first, anything Marvel-related where I feel like we absolutely have no idea what they're going to do going into it. Do you find that refreshing, Chris, as a longtime Marvel fan compared to everything else they've done up to this point, where we really have no idea where they're going from this point forward?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely got me hooked, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I love any kind of change to the Marvel Universe right now, just because, like, that's why Guardians was so great when that came out, because it was so different from everything else we had seen up to that point. And the weirder this show gets, the more I'm probably going to be into it, just because her powers are so undefined in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they can just do whatever they want. So I'm very intrigued, and I'm here for this till the end.
What about you, Phil?
I think it's been refreshing. I think it's been cool to just kind of guess at certain things based on what we know from comics and speculate. and just kind of look for Easter eggs and stuff. It's been cool. I mean, I think it also helps that there's nothing else Marvel related going on right now, so we can't tie it to anything else. Usually, if they have a movie out, like we kind of know what the next movie is coming, and we can kind of go, okay, that might connect to this, or this might connect to that.
Yeah, there's I mean, again, this is based off some comics, and you said the House of M as well, Phil. You said that on the last episode, right?
Yeah, and see that's what makes it interesting. That I wouldn't be surprised if somebody is like manipulating her, but she also is like willfully being manipulated at this point, because in House of M, it was like Pietro manipulated her into creating the alternate reality that was House of M. But at the end of the day, it was something she wanted as well. Like he came up with the plan to manipulate her, but she ended up being happy in that reality, so she didn't want to lose it. And I think this is kind of the same thing. I mean, I don't know what exactly else could be going on, but it definitely seemed like she is like, I don't want to lose this. That's definitely the take I got from looking at this.
Do you think that she's willingly being manipulated, like you said, because like in exchange they allowed whoever this is allowed her to get Vision back? So it's like, oh, okay, we'll allow you to create this world, and I'll manipulate you, but I'll give you Vision back as like in exchange type of thing.
Well, I think unlike most of the other Marvel characters coming out of Infinity War, she's been kind of grieving and being damaged for her entire character arc, and she's never had her own movie or standalone thing to deal with any of that. Mm-hmm. So I think her being manipulated by someone is kind of like, oh, I kind of don't want to face any of these things anyway. I don't want to face the fact that Vision's not here. And the same thing in this episode, we immediately see like she is clearly not ready to face certain things with Quicksilver. Like she acknowledged it, but she was like, yeah, I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it regardless, because I think these next couple episodes are going to be awesome. And yeah, we're only 3 episodes in, and I liked the first 2, but I thought this one was the best one yet. And they picked up the pace a little bit quicker than I thought. This was almost all, storytelling, story advancement here, as opposed to the first 2, which were kind of about the vibe, about the 70s, 60s, whatever. One last quick question for you guys: did you think? And again, like you said earlier, Chris, it wasn't really about hitting that time period. It was more about the other stuff going on. Do you think they did the Brady Bunch inspired stuff justice? Do you think they did as good of a job with that as they did the first 2 episodes with the Dick Van Dyke stuff and Bewitched and everything else?
Oh yeah, I think their references and homages and all that stuff were on point. Like just the opening credits scene alone, even though it was clearly slightly based on the Brady Bunch stuff because of the whole like 9 people in squares, but they were in hexagons in this instead. It definitely still felt like they were doing a good job with that. It just felt like they weren't leaning as hard into this is one specific show and more this is all 70s sitcoms sort of rolled into one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with the next episode, because I don't think there's really any information out there about what 4 could be. If they jump forward into the 80s, I'm really curious to see what kind of sitcom or show they decide to reference with that.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. I don't know what it would be exactly, but like you said, we're kind of entering uncharted territories of sorts, because the first 3 episodes were already out there for a lot of members of the media who cover this stuff, so they kind of knew what to expect with this one. Like you said last week, I don't think anyone has gotten the rest of the episodes, or they will get the rest of the episodes, so we're all kind of finding out together come next Friday when the next episode is released, which is pretty cool. And like you said last week, I think that's smart, because if there's any big swerve coming, we have no idea, there's no spoilers, unless you go on Twitter after not watching the episode next Friday morning, and then you're spoiled. So, like we talked about last week, it might be just best to avoid social media altogether if you don't want to be spoiled, unless you watch it first thing in the morning. That's another question I wanted to ask you guys. When did you guys watch the episode this time? Did you watch it when it first came out at 2 a.m. your time? It comes out at 3 a.m. where I am, so that's just too late for me. I would fall asleep immediately. But when did you guys check it out when it went up? This morning or a little while ago or whatever?
I watched it really early this morning because I was up.
Nice. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think I had probably started at around 5 a.m.
Damn. So you guys, it goes up for 2 a.m. Would you guys watch it at 2 a.m. as soon as it's uploaded, or is that just, I would rather wake up and watch it as opposed to staying up and watching it?
I was just up because I fell asleep super early yesterday just because I could. So, because I'm turning into an old man who loves his sleep. But yeah, I woke up and did a couple things, and then I was reminded. It was just like, oh yeah, WandaVision. So I immediately threw that on because I didn't want to be spoiled on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing I wanted to point out really quick before we go is that it only really just occurred to me now while we were talking that this is the first time, even though she has to keep doing things to sort of keep it going, this is sort of the first time we've seen a happy Wanda. Because if you think about it, every role she's had, her character deals with some kind of tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in the first movie, she talks about her parents dying. She's been experimented on by Hydra for a long time, loses her brother. That's all in the first movie that she appears in. What was the next movie she was in? Civil War?
Yep.
She accidentally kills a bunch of Wakandans in the middle of a fight.
Yeah.
Huge thing right there on her shoulders that she obviously takes, to heart. Obviously, she loses Vision, and then she gets dusted out of existence. And then in Endgame, she gets brought back, and the love of her life doesn't. It's like every single time we see her, there's some kind of horrible, painful thing that she has to deal with. And so this show, like, showing what lengths she will go to keep her happiness, I think that's potentially setting up, even if it's just a minor short-term thing, for her to show some evil tendencies. Not evil, but like, she sort of just threw Monica out of the neighborhood as soon as she became a slight nuisance. So who knows what she'll do to somebody who, who knows what she'll do to somebody who approaches her saying, like, I know what you're doing and this needs to stop. Like, she just going to blink them out of existence altogether? It's just really cool how they did it at the end there, where there was just that little dramatic music cue as they showed her looking over the babies, and you're like, oh, I can see her being willing to do some crazy shit to keep those babies safe and to keep her family together.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's bound to happen, or that's bound to come in the episodes ahead. That happiness that you mentioned, do you feel it's a fake happiness, or when we watch Wanda in this show in the first 3 episodes we've seen so far, is that a genuine happiness on Wanda's end?
I mean, it's probably a genuine happiness in terms of, like, she's feeling happy, but the cause of the happiness is obviously all fake. So that's going to be another thing she'll have to deal with at some point, is once this whole illusion gets broken, and if Vision's not there at the end of it, then she's obviously going to be very, very, very hard to deal with.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Phil?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And it is very telling. Like, all of this stuff is, like, the first time she's ever been happy from our point of view as the viewers. And I think that's very intentional. I think having the babies so early in the show and putting them in a situation where we can watch them be a family for longer is going to make her having to say goodbye to them that much harder, and it's going to make it that much more heartwarming of a moment. And that's kind of why I don't want to call her the villain of the show. I don't think she's the villain of the show. I think she just has been through a lot, and it's kind of like I don't want to keep going through terrible things. I just want this one thing. It's kind of similar to Wonder Woman in that way. Wonder Woman in 1984, and it really feels similar with what we saw with Vision this episode, and it's really clear that he is in the dark, which furthers my belief that he's not real and he's still dead.
Yeah. Yeah, and
if there's a goddamn wish stone like in Wonder Woman, I'm gonna be so pissed.
Oh God. I don't know if they would use that crutch.
I'm gonna be so pissed if there's a MacGuffin like a wish stone again.
Yeah.
Considering this
is bringing up Wonder Woman just brought back all this anger from me because that movie should have been great and wasn't.
It was not.
That's a whole other separate review.
Yeah, I don't want to get into ranting about Wonder Woman, but there's similar story beats, and that's what made me think of it. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if there's somebody that's also like pulling strings here, and she's just like, well, I want this anyway, and I'm not gonna let it go.
Yeah.
You know, I had a thought about this. So, Graham, you'd mentioned earlier, like, maybe she made a deal with somebody to get Vision back in some way. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm almost wondering if they'll have Mephisto just be a straight-up stand-in for Satan in the Marvel universe, because Mephisto's kind of Satan, but kind of not. There's, like, several different Satans in the Marvel comics. It's really weird. Mm-hmm. But with Mephisto, it's like, what if the deal she made, she didn't realize that it involved bringing two children? Because the weird part about her kids in the comics is that technically each one of them was created using a fragment of Mephisto's soul. Mm-hmm. So I'm almost wondering if this has something to do with that, where like Mephisto's like, I need somebody to bring my children to the world. It's going to be you. You just won't know it.
I think that'd be great.
Maybe that's reaching a little too far. Marvel comics get so weird sometimes, and I know that the movies will never get quite as weird as the comics did, but my brain kind of wants them to, so that's why I come out with these weird theories. And, you know, for all we know, Mephisto's never going to show up in the Marvel universe, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was some involvement with that character. And I do believe that all this is going to heavily lead into what happens in Doctor Strange, which I'm so curious if we're going to see Benedict show up in this show at the end or not.
Yeah, I could see him showing up in a post-credit scene. And yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Mephisto, there's been a lot of speculation among fans that, not that he will show up, but that he could. And I think people are playing it up so much to the point, at least from the people that I follow, are playing it up to the point where, honestly, I'm going to be disappointed if he's not on the show at some point, if he's not in the show in some role. I think they had shown like a Satan-like figure in the trailer for Loki. One of the recent trailers for Loki, they were at like a church or something, and in one of the windows you could see like a devil-like figure that people kind of, you know, picked out to be Mephisto. I have no idea, but I know nothing about the character. You guys know a lot more than I do. I think that'd be fucking sick. Do you have any expectations or desire to see Mephisto in this show, Phil?
No, not really. I know some people are like trying to say Mephisto's there. Like I keep seeing the sixth thing out there, and like it's kind of not consistent because you can see six in some other things now. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of along for the ride. Like, I don't want to jump too ahead of it and go, oh, it's definitely this. But, yeah, it is something, like, it does feel like there's something else in there with them. I'm just not sure what it is. Long as they don't go, like, in crazy routes and do, like, anything like Avengers 200, where we've got, like, people having kids and they really turn out to be adults that impregnated someone. That it was weird. I don't know if either of you read the comic.
No, I don't know what you're talking about, but that sounds a little weird.
So, like, the Avengers 200, that was the infamous Miss Marvel story where I can't remember the name of the villain, but he took Miss Marvel to a pocket universe and impregnated her with himself so that he can come to the regular universe. And she had the baby, and then he grew to himself in real time. And yeah, it was weird. It was like, why? No, let's not ever do this again.
Well, Miss Marvel is coming up, so you never know.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a different Miss Marvel. This is when Carol was going by Miss Marvel at the time.
Oh, this is a Carol. Okay, this wasn't Kamala.
That in itself is why we don't speak of a lot of stuff of Carol as Miss Marvel. We go like, nope, she's Captain Marvel here. Let's not speak of that other stuff. I don't know what you're talking about. Kamala's Miss Marvel now. Moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. They still have 6 episodes to go, so I think a Mephisto thing would be cool. But I'm still hoping whether it's Mephisto or something else, there's got to be something else at play here, because I think the Wanda element to it, as you guys mentioned, and she'd probably be justified in doing everything that she is after all the shit she's taken over the last 5 or 6 years. She's probably had more... I was going to say she's gone through more grief than almost any other character. That's probably not fair to say, just because Thor lost his dad, mom, brother... girlfriend dumped him, although she's back in the next movie. Sister had to kill her. Probably his home planet got destroyed. So there's probably, and best friend died too. So who would you guys say? Quick question, bonus question. Who's gone through more grief in the MCU so far, Thor or Wanda?
I would probably say Wanda, because we've never seen Wanda on an upswing. We at least know that Thor came from royalty and he had like a good life at one point. I don't think we've seen anything good happen for Wanda so far.
I mean, she and Vision had that like 5-minute vacation in Infinity War, and then it all went to shit, so she couldn't even have that. What were your thoughts on that, Chris? Who do you think has had more grief, Wanda or Thor so far?
I mean, it seems like Wanda's just had the rougher life in general. Granted, Thor's been around for like, didn't they establish it? It's like 1,500 years or something like that.
They said that in Infinity War, yeah.
So God knows what he's gone through in the course of those centuries. But, Wanda being a young woman, it seems like her life started rough and just got worse.
Yeah, well, I would probably say Wanda, because I didn't think about the fact, like what you said, Phil, about how she had such a rough upbringing. And yeah, Thor's been around for 1,500 years. I would probably still go with Wanda, though, all things considered. But it's pretty close. But I think she's been the MVP of the show so far. I'm really enjoying Paul Bettany as Vision. This is probably the best version of Vision I've seen in terms of how he's come across. And Paul Bettany's really good, but I've never really given a shit about Vision aside from the Jarvis stuff up until this point. But I think he's been great. But obviously, I think Wanda, so far, this probably isn't really anything bold to say. It's probably been the best part of the show up to this point.
Yeah, she's definitely carrying the story. Like, Paul Bettany is doing a great job channeling all these sitcom husbands and all that stuff, but she's been given the meat of the acting stuff to actually have to do. Mm-hmm. So, and she's carrying it very well. Like, who would have thought that the third Olsen sister would be the most successful in terms of like what she's doing in acting?
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
No.
But yeah, I definitely agree. Like, this has been great just to see like her showcase how good she is as an actress, and then just to see those two characters get character development and see them do more than just be, oh, they're here for this fight. Oh, well, we won't see them for a few more scenes. Oh, they're back for the fight.
Yeah. No, it's cool. We're totally seeing a different version of these guys than we've seen at any other point in this, in the MCU. So it's cool. I agree with you guys as far as how she's come across so far. And, yeah, like I've already said a bunch of times, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. So any closing thoughts before we wind... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we need to talk about the significance of her magic not working on the stork.
Oh, with the red, like, dust, and then it didn't work? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like, I think that's a pretty clear sign that was because it was her son as an unborn child causing that to happen and not her.
Yeah, I was just figuring that she was just glitching out because she was pregnant. But yeah, no, the fact that her magic didn't work in that moment, I guess that would make the most sense. Do you have any theories, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, of course we know Billy is going to become Wiccan. Well, his reincarnated version becomes Wiccan.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so I'm assuming, that's what I assumed in that part. I assumed that she was unaware that her unborn child was affecting her magic.
Yeah, like with the butterflies, when she's like, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, and the butterflies to me was very trippy 70s TV show.
Yeah.
Like, you would see that in the opening for a lot of 70s TV shows.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, any closing thoughts, guys, before we wind down here? I think we nailed pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much got the whole episode, I think.
And then some. Any additional comments, Phil?
I'm just looking forward to where this... I mean, this was definitely a week. Not having that second episode, I was like, oh, man, we had to wait a week.
Yeah. You know, in retrospect, I'm really glad they actually did 2 episodes at once, because I think if they did that first one and then the second one, not diehard Marvel fans, but I think, because I got a text from a friend of mine that was watching the show and said, does this show pick up after the first episode? Because, again, we enjoyed a lot of elements of it from, like, the old school stuff that you guys mentioned last week, but in terms of moving the story forward, there wasn't a lot of that. We had seeds planted, but very subtly, and that was about it. We got a lot of that in this episode, so I feel like if they waited until week 3, this was episode 3, but it's technically week 2, because they put out episodes 1 and 2 at the same time. I think in retrospect, that was probably the best thing they could have done, to kind of speed up the process, but not speed it up too quick, so people didn't lose hope that it's like, okay, this is a boring show, or it's not for me. So, yeah, and I think the decision to put out 2 episodes at once last week and then go one a week from there was probably the best thing they could have done.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so at least we have, 1 episode this week, 1 episode next week. And I was the same way, Phil. When it ended, I'm like, as soon as the car showed up in the field, I wasn't looking at the time, but I'm like, it's bound to end at any second, because that's exactly something Marvel would do, and that's exactly what happened. So it left me looking forward to next week and nothing else. So it should be great. But yeah, this has been awesome, guys. Thanks as always. We'll be back next week, hopefully, to discuss episode 4 of WandaVision. So, Chris, people can find you on the Twitter machine at @BIA_Doctor, Phil at PhilDL616. Phil, Chris, thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks.